morning, Corpus Christi, Coastal Bend, and listeners wherever you are around the globe. Thank you for joining us on another edition of the Sunday Sports Rush. I am Alex Wesiter, filling in for James Espinosa. Joined alongside me is co-host and producer Adin Ducker.
What's Gucci with it?
Thank you for joining us today. Of course, James, it seems like I come down here and he just doesn't want to do his job anymore.
Yeah. Especially since one of his favorite teams is about to get eliminated too. He doesn't want to
He just doesn't want to show his face around these parts. In all realness, he is recovering from a bit of an illness. So, well wishes out there to James, and thank you all for joining us on this edition of the Sunday Sports Rush on May 21st, a beautiful Sunday here in Corpus Christi. Thank you for joining us, and coming up in this show, we have some Texas high school baseball recaps leading off the show instead of where we usually put it lower down, usually where we would see the sports grab bag, followed by the 920 news. Wemby to the Spurs. We get James calling in and getting his thoughts on the Spurs getting the first overall pick. Of course, we know they've had some great success with that in the past. And then we follow up and end our number one with some MLB talk. Get in at any time on Twitter, responding to the Sunday Sports Rush tweet at SportsRush1440 on Twitter. And you can follow Aiden or I or anybody else who we've seen on the show pop up at Sir Edward James, or follow me at Alex Wesiter, that is Weister. I know I have to spell out my last name sometimes for some people. And Ducker Aiden 36, or follow the station, the mothership here, at 1440 Keys AM. Let us jump straight into it with some Texas high school baseball recap. It's been a fantastic week of some baseball here in the Coastal Bend. We had the wrap up, the conclusion of the epic three-game series between the Ray Texans and the Carroll Tigers, starting at 3 p.m. yesterday instead of 2 due to a lightning delay. I was a part of every game of that series, and I enjoyed every minute of it. I could see you shaking your head back there a little bit, Aiden, as your Carroll Tigers couldn't get it done.
I enjoyed Game 2 a lot.
Yes, Game 2 was amazing. Of course, Carroll Tigers rattling off 7 runs in the top of the 5th to end up winning that game 12-6.
But starting off from Game 1, you know, Ray had Kevin Goss on the mound, and Carroll in that first inning just blitzed him, got 3 runs, I believe.
Yes.
But then Kevin Goss settled down. He started to. It was one of those where he got settled in, showed us what he's been one of the best pitchers in all of South Texas all season, and Ray, I believe it was the 4th or 5th inning. What was the inning?
Every single game they got their scoring started, it was in the 4th.
Yeah, they just put up 6 straight runs in that inning, and
it was just enough to get it done.
And then Kevin Goss held it down the rest of the way. I believe Tina Hero did a relief appearance in that game too.
Yes, did not allow a hit in all of that Game 1 appearance that he had. And of course, Kevin Goss, we've seen him get off to some slow starts, but usually he picks it up in the later innings as he starts to figure out his pace and figure out some of the batters. And I mean, he got it done. Tina Hero came in. We know how great he is. Of course, Carroll was able to get to him in Game 2, which was key, as it brought in a couple of different other relief pitchers that sort of allowed them to take that massive lead that won them the game.
But then again, Ray rallies and they score 6 unanswered runs after being down 5-0. And I'm thinking, man, like this, it's gonna happen again to Carroll. But to Carroll's credit, they rally for 7 unanswered runs to beat them 12-6.
It was definitely unexpected, and I mean, shout out to Carroll. They made it an extremely competitive series, but I think we understated how much the rain delay may have affected Carroll. Baseball is a very routine sport. All these players have their own routines. The coaches have their own routines. And who knows, maybe Carroll as a whole is a extremely routine team, and getting pushed back an hour, having to go sit in the team bus and not being able to get through their warm-up routines like they normally would. Well, maybe it got to them a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, Ray has to deal with the same situation as well.
Yes, but we saw some very uncharacteristic mistakes from Carroll throughout the entire game.
Yeah, yes.
Especially from the fielding. The hitting couldn't get anything really going either, but, I mean, it's not all their fault. Of course, they faced a really great freshman pitcher, might I add, Jordan Garza.
Yeah, he's gonna be a thorn in a lot of teams' side for the next 3 seasons. So I was impressed that he was able to shut down that Carroll offense. Because the Carroll offense has some guys that can hit, and coming from a freshman like that's. Play easily the player of the game 3.
Oh, yeah. A complete game shutout. You really don't get better than that from a freshman.
Jack Bell was struggling a little bit here and there, but game 3, he finally put up some clutch hits and got that offense going for, I believe it was a 5-0 victory for Ray. I was in Rockport, so I wasn't able to track this game like I did the first 2. But, it was just a great series. What we thought this would go to games, to game 3. Ray at the end, they've been in this situation before.
Yeah, they have.
And
same with Carroll.
But Ray made it to round 4 last season.
Indeed, they did, where they fell to Georgetown.
Yeah, and so they showed, just sometimes they show you you're a slightly better team, and that's what we saw. But no, hats off to Carroll. Had a great season. Carroll's gonna, for years to come, gonna be a perennial playoff contender. So.
Next season, we may see a little bit of a step back. They have a lot of really key seniors leaving the team, but of course, they're still going to have Dave Palomo, who's going to be an amazing leader. I don't doubt that he'll be able to get those freshmen into playing shape, getting ready for the season. Overall, it was a great series from both teams. It was impressive from Ray to battle back from a lot of adversity. It was impressive from Carroll to go against a team that they're historically, at least in the past 6-7 seasons, not very good against, going into the series, only 2-8 since 2016 against them. And a massive shout out to the crowd and everybody who watched and listened here on 1440 Keys or the MIC Sports Network. The crowd reception, the fan reception was just phenomenal, especially from the coaches as well. We had a lot of great words from head coach Orlando Ruiz after the game in his little post-game press conference that we started to do on the MIC Sports Network. Very thankful for the crew being there, seeing everybody, broadcasting these games. So it was a nice thing to hear from Coach Ruiz. Moving on to number 1 Sinton, beating Pleasanton in the regional quarterfinals down in 4A. And I think I can speak for most people, and I'm not very surprised at this. Sinton is an absolute force in 4A, and there's a reason why they're number 1 and number 4 in the country, because they are just a well-oiled machine that is well on their way to another state title.
Yeah, I even think you put them against the bigger 5A schools, and I think they're still the best team in
I was telling that to Doug before our game kicked off yesterday. The only way to really stop Sinton is just to shove them up in 6A and see what they can do up there. And even then, I think they'd still be effective.
The one game Sinton lost against New Braunfels Canyon, they had their 5th starter pitching that game.
Yeah.
And so they have aces for all day. And I honestly think this is the best Sinton team. Not
which is saying a lot considering what we saw them do last year.
But what I really meant to say was I think this is the best Coastal Bend team we've ever seen.
Yes, I would have to agree with that.
They would have to win back-to-back.
Yes,
to cement it, but I think that's going to happen, and I think they're just woo. Lights out pitching, timely hitting. It's just
If you're getting 4 rounds deep into the playoff, and you're still run ruling teams, and a team that was 26-8-2 run ruling them, you don't get much more impressive than that. Sinton, Coach Adrian Alaniz, they're on their way. I'm fully expecting them to make another run at it. I would be very, very shocked if they don't. It's just an incredible program. It's another run rule in the playoffs, and Coach Alaniz kicking off the 5-run frame that ended the game in the 10-run mercy rule, which I forgot that they had in the playoffs. I thought they got rid of it. He said about his team, "This is the mentality our boys have. We treat this like a boxing match, inning by inning, round by round. Let's go out and do our best. We may not get everything we want out of every single round, but Jaquay is not going to shy away from competition. It's not in his nature. And if this is a boxing match we're going into, boy, is this the most lopsided boxing match I've ever seen in my life."
Yeah.
we're talking about a prime Mike Tyson going against me, honestly, because there just is not teams matching up well against Sinton. It's just not something that you see. I mean, looking at their schedule, they faced Robstown, who's a good team, beat them handedly. They faced Canyon Lake, beat them handedly. Goliad, Sherryland, who faced Carroll and took them to 3 games, they beat them 5-1. Edinburgh Vela, who knocked Vets out of the playoffs, they beat them 3-2.
And Edinburgh Vela's not out of the playoffs as well.
Exactly. La Jolla Palmview, they beat King in the first round, beat them as well. Smithson Valley, one of the teams that was deep in 5A, they beat them as well. Dripping Springs, who's one of the top teams in the state. The only team they lost to, as you said, New Braunfels Canyon, but we saw them last year lose to a team which was Toloso Midway.
Now, who was Sinton going to face against before the regional final?
Before the regional final?
Yeah, round 4.
I would have to pull up the UIL baseball
I
playoffs
assume
real
Sinton's
quick.
going to be favored.
Of course. They're going to be favored all the way up to
I'm
states.
seeing that Robstown-Sinton matchup in the regional final that we think's going to happen.
It's Bernie versus Robstown on one side, then Davenport versus Sinton. I have seen nothing on Davenport. They're 22-15.
I've never heard of Davenport ever.
They're
now,
third,
no disrespect to Davenport.
They're third coming out of their district, 22-15. I'm sorry. You've had a great season, but it's destiny.
You know,
destiny arrives.
That upcoming Sinton and Robstown.
A lot of people are saying Bernie is likely going to win that, but Robstown is not going to go down without a fight. That's for sure.
Man, I just feel like Robstown's good enough to. They're good enough to.
I would agree personally. That is going to wrap up our Texas high school baseball.
Oh, we also had London defeat Rio Hondo.
Of course, Doug was down there for that call.
Doug and Jake did that call. That was a 1-gamer, but London,
it was
the defending state champs in the 3A.
And once again, they're having another 1-gamer come up in the playoffs. Don't know when teams are going to learn. You're not going to beat London in a 1-gamer. They have a phenomenal starting pitcher.
I mean, London's
number 1
well.
in 3A.
Yeah. London and Sinton, Sinton's done it more dominantly.
Yes.
London last season had a few close games, but we're blessed to see these two juggernauts play at the same time right now.
We are truly in a golden era of high school baseball in the Coastal Bend. That will wrap up our Texas high school baseball segment. Up next, should sports leagues put playoff games on streaming-only platforms, and an update on the Ja Morant story and changes coming to the NBA. Coming up next, it is the 920 News. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Sunday Sports Rush. It is 9:20, but before we get into the 9:20 news, want to hop over onto Twitter where any of the listeners out there can get in on the Twitter chain we have going on here with any questions or comments on any of the segments we are talking about. We have Anthony Gonzalez. He was giving some well wishes to James. It indeed was not a stomach bug. He is dealing with some bronchitis. He's just getting over it a little bit, but he said he's feeling better, so thank you for the well wishes. And then he gets in on our baseball segment that we just had for Texas high school baseball. Mercy Rule in high school sounds like a brutal team. And boy, only if you knew the half of it. Of course, he is talking about the Sinton Pirates, the defending 4A champions who look like they're well on their way to another championship. It's just been an absolutely amazing season from them again. They had a phenomenal matchup against Cal Allen, and what was that, the regional finals last year at Whataburger Field against Cal Allen. That was, I think it was a 1-0 finale. It was an amazing game. Sinton ended up winning. It felt like the state championships, and of course they went on to win states, and it was a dominant performance from them. We really hadn't seen a team like that match up against Cal Allen and be that effective, and they got to face Cal Allen again this year, where it was not so favorable for them after a close game one. They beat them 8-2 in game 2. But yes, they are run ruling people left and right. It's truly just not some fair performances. But thank you for getting in. If you want to get in on this chain we have going on here on Twitter, look up Sports Rush 1440 on Twitter and you will see the tweet for this show and get in with any questions or comments about the show. But without further ado, it's the 920 news.
Holy, there's a lot of news.
And now the news.
Starting off, we have Peacock getting into the NFL playoffs. They will carry the exclusive rights to a NFL wildcard game. Very interesting. I think this is setting up a pretty bad precedent for the league coming up, allowing a exclusive right broad or live streaming service to get rights to a playoff game. What do you think about this, Aiden?
I hope they get the worst, wild card matchup that they could get, man. I don't.
Lions versus Commanders.
I've always been fearful that the Super Bowl will go pay-per-view one day.
I completely agree.
And man, it's just that's so. I just don't like it, man. It's just give them the worst wild card matchup you could think of. But yeah, I'm not a fan of it.
Some details on this. The Peacock exclusive game on January 13th will start at either 8:15 or 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. The game will be broadcast on NBC stations in the markets of the two teams. It will also be available on mobile devices through the NFL Plus package. It will be preceded by a late afternoon playoff game on NBC, and Peacock will kick off. And NBC and Peacock, that will kick off at 4:30 p.m. Eastern. It sounds like a very similar setup to how UFC has their cards now, where you can watch the early prelims and the prelims, and then they kick it over to the ESPN Plus pay-per-view that you have to buy, which is, I think, like $70 or $80 now.
Yeah, just like I said, not a fan of it. So, I mean.
And looking at it, the terms of the agreement are pretty juicy. The terms of the agreement were not disclosed, but the Wall Street Journal reported that it is a roughly one-year deal with the league receiving approximately $110 million, which, I mean, if you've seen anything in the league, you know cash rules everything around those parts. And $110 million, I guarantee that Roger Goodell is not going to turn that one down. The Saturday night wildcard game, the past two seasons, has drawn in more than 20 million viewers. Last season's game between the Jaguars and the Chargers averaged 20.6 million, while Buffalo and New England had 26.4. Of course, Buffalo, a bit bigger of a draw than either the Chargers or Jacksonville. At least I could personally say, as I enjoy watching Buffalo a little bit more than them. Of course, we saw the Chargers blow that 24-0 lead in the wild card, and I watched every second of that just in awe, watching Justin Herbert and the Chargers let the Jaguars just march right past them and go on to the next round. So, Aiden, I pose a question to you. Okay. Is this the right move for the NFL to have a playoff game on a streaming platform? And before you answer, if anybody else wants to get in, you can get in on Twitter at SportsRush1440 if you want to have a take on this. But go ahead, Aiden.
I mean, it's like that thing from Jerry Maguire. Show me the money! James, I can't find the sounder. It's somewhere here, so I had to do it myself. I mean, if the NFL's going to generate money off of it, I mean, I at least hope that's the reason why they're doing it, which is understandable. But,
yeah.
As a consumer, it's just I have to get Peacock now. You
couldn't have picked one of the other ones, like a Hulu or a Paramount, a little more popular one.
Yeah, but, I do miss watching The Office, so maybe I can, maybe I can get Peacock for that now. Maybe I can binge The Office again. So
Fair point. In our next piece of news, Ja Morant, we have an update on his whole debacle that he's had going on, not just in this past week, but through the past few months, as he's had now 2 instances of him showing a gun on an Instagram Live, and he could face a significant suspension from the NBA. A quote from Adrian Wojnarowski, one of the leading info getters in the NBA. He stated, "I think Ja Morant is facing a lengthy and a significant suspension to start next season, if indeed that was a firearm in his hand in that video," which it was.
Yeah.
there's going to be some pressure from other teams around the NBA that this isn't just isn't harmful to the Memphis Grizzlies themselves, but this is harmful on a league level. I don't think Adam Silver is going to take this one lightly.
It's got to be at least 20 games. That's what I think. Because what was the previous one? He was out for 8 games?
It was, I think they labeled it as indefinite, but it was kind of just like a hush-hush sort of just let him sit until the playoffs type of thing. Because it was just the last few weeks of the season. They were just shut him down, let him come back for the playoffs. It was unspoken, but it was sort of this is what we're going to do. We're just not going to say it publicly type of thing.
I mean, just look for the Grizzlies. Just from last season, they went toe-to-toe with the defending champ Warriors in that 6-game series, and now that they're losing to a mid-Lakers team in the first round. A little shot there, James. and literally shot. Anyway,
that's a good one.
And it's just now just the golden opportunity this franchise had to ascend to the upper the upper elite teams, and now you just can't depend on John Morant anymore. So I like John Morant when he's on the court. He's a baller, but it's just you need to give him at least a 20 to 25 gamer to be serious about it. And if it happens again, you can give him a full season. It's just that simple. Now, I do understand okay, technically it is his right to have that gun.
Yes,
but I mean
it's not his right to waive it on IG Live.
But he's not going to go to prison.
No.
So I mean, this is just a private organization doing what's necessary to reinforce their brand.
Yeah.
So,
and one little final news note before we head to the break: EA Sports is finally giving fans, I know me personally, something that they've wanted for so long. Another college football game finally coming out once again. The fans are getting what they want, and every player in the FBS will be able and eligible to opt in to have their likeness in the new EA Sports college football game coming up. So good for them, college football players.
The last NCAA football game, the
NCAA 14,
NCAA 14,
legendary, absolutely
knowing
legendary.
EA, it's not going to be as good, but at least it's something. So.
That's going to do it for the first half hour of the Sunday Sports Rush. Thank you all for tuning in. Up next, it happened. The Spurs won the NBA lottery. We will talk about that and get James's thoughts coming up right after the break. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Sunday Sports Rush. We are halfway through hour 1 here on episode 117 of the Sunday Sports Rush. Thank you all for listening, and thank you all for getting in over on Twitter, interacting with us during the show here. We just got done talking about the 920 news. John Morant likely facing suspension when the season starts. Some EA Sports news with the new upcoming college football game, and the NFL giving a wild card game exclusively to the streaming service Peacock. Coming up here in segment 3, for all you Spurs fans out there, rejoice as they got the first overall pick, and it is 99.99% sure that at this point they'll be getting Victor Wembanyama.
Man, I've been waiting. I haven't said this in 3 years.
I can't say I've heard this bump ever. Wow, that's a deep cut right there.
Yeah, it's been a while since I played that. Well, the last time the Spurs were true title contenders was 2017, so we didn't have a Sports Rush then. But
6 years ago now. Ooh.
Anyway,
that hurts.
Anyway, on the, as Dotson likes to say, the 4240 Keys hotline, we have our one and only, the hostess with the brostess, I guess.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. Anyway,
bring him in.
James Espinosa on the line.
Welcome in, James. How are you feeling, my man?
Yo, I appreciate the somewhat, pretty decently done introduction by Aiden.
on a scale of 2.7 to 4.8, how was out of 10? How was that?
I don't know, man. I'll give it a good rating. I mean, it was about 6. 6 out of 10. It wasn't the best, but hey, y'all guys are doing a great job this morning. And look, like y'all guys just said, right? The Spurs got Wemby. It happened. I can't even believe this, fellas. Whenever I was sitting on my couch on Tuesday and I saw that the Pistons got the 5th pick, that's when, in my heart, I kind of had a feeling like, oh, crap, this might happen. And then, of course, the Rockets get the 4th pick. And whenever I saw the Rockets get the 4th pick, I knew that the Spurs had them. The odds were in their favor. It goes Portland 3. It goes Hornets 2, Spurs 1. Right when the Hornets logo came up, I let out a primal yell that I have never even produced. That might have actually led to my bronchitis. I'm not even joking. How loud I yelled right there.
I mean,
had to go. Go ahead, guys. Sorry.
I mean, I hope that's the thing that led to your bronchitis. Well, I hope it wasn't anything else, like you yelling at a spider.
Well,
there we go.
That too, and we can get to the spider conclusion.
Well, we'll get to that later on in the segment. But
yeah, at the end of the segment, I'll tell you guys how I essentially murdered a spider. But so back to the Wemby thing, right? This is the thing, and I know you guys are going to talk to Jeff Garcia coming up at 10:30, 10:05 San Antonio.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be on the line, so y'all guys got a ton of questions prepped for him. But this is the thing I'm feeling about Wemby, and this is a question that I think the audience should kind of ponder. So hit us up on Twitter at SportsRush1440, on the text line 361-882-5397.
Quick plug.
Are the Spurs now in win now mode? Like, is it win now, or do the Spurs slowly break in Wemby-MANIA and take about another year or two to fully get themselves up to speed? So should the Spurs go win now, or should they take their time with Wemby and break them into the NBA? I think that's going to be one of the most important off-season things to monitor when it comes to this Spurs team.
As I've said, I think this is sort of a get him in, get him ready, coach him up, see how he's doing throughout the season, get some supporting cast in there, really build out the team, but this isn't the offseason to go all in. From what I've seen in who's available in free agency, I think next year's the one really to blow all the cash they got, go out there, get who they can, draft another great young guy, and then really make the push in the next 2 years.
I mean, the two most intriguing free agents out there are Kyrie and James Harden.
And both of them have massive question marks. One, Kyrie and his ability to stay on the court, his attitude. Of course, James Harden is an aging superstar. He's getting up there in age, and I don't know how well he'd necessarily fit in with this young group.
And there's some nice starters that are going to be out there, like Austin Reeves, for example. But is Austin Reeves really like that guy? Is he getting a benefit for being a Laker or something like that? So
one guy I've seen linked to going to the Spurs a little bit, and I would hate to see him leave, but I can't deny it's a good fit. It'd be Brook Lopez. 3-point shooting, big man, can defend really well. I think that would be a really good pickup. A nice veteran piece who's got some championship pedigree. Get in there. I think that's. What do you think about that one, James?
Would he want to come off the bench? Because that would be a really big team if you move Sohan to 3.
What do you think about getting in Brook Lopez, James?
I don't mind the Brook Lopez discussion. I think he'd be guy's been in the league for almost 15 years. He's a veteran. He's been there, done that. He's an NBA champion. He's someone who I think could fit the Spurs system well, and he's someone who I feel could be in the locker room mentor to Wemby-MANIA. You know what I mean? So I would love the Brook Lopez acquisition if that were to come to fruition for the Spurs. Y'all guys threw out a couple of names, another couple of names that I'm hearing for San Antonio. One, Jordan Poole of Golden State.
No.
That would be devastating.
That is a name that is out there.
It is, yes.
And let's just let's look at the glass half full scenario here, right? Jordan Poole in Golden State, has he ever really fit in there? Let's just be honest. Has he ever really fit in there? Has he even hit his peak?
Yes, last year he did.
I don't think he has. I think under a Popovich system, I think Popovich could scheme him up right, and I think he could be a deadly shooter for the Spurs. I'm just looking at a glass half full here. That is a possibility. And plus, with Wemby-MANIA now at the center position, he's going to open up so much more things for shooters. I think Poole could thrive. So keep your eye out for Jordan Poole. I think that's an intriguing name that the Spurs could potentially go for.
I'd rather the Spurs go after somebody like Jaylen Brown,
which would be a free agent next year.
Next year,
Yeah.
And I do believe, though, I don't think the Spurs team right now is going to make it to the playoffs.
No.
With WEMBY-MANIA, because I still think there needs to be the backcourt needs to be addressed a little bit. Trey Jones he's going to be a solid player, but I don't know, is he a true starting point guard? We'll have to see. And yeah, but the sky's the limit. I haven't been this optimistic about the Spurs, and since they were up on that KD Warriors team by 25 before that Zaza thing. So I'll just say that.
I mean, just to give my point again, like, this is one of the most exciting times I've ever had as a Spurs fan,
and rightfully so.
Let's just be honest, like, ever since the 2014 finals where they defeated the Heat, right? The Spurs have gone through a downslide. They had the whole Kawhi debacle, and that set the franchise back a few years. They had those 3 or 4 years where they were trying to decide, hey, are we going for it or are we going to tank? With the DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge years. And I get it, they were still a competitive team, but they were never going to hit that championship ceiling. They were always a first-round type of team, a play-in type of team.
And even
so now, you really got the centerpiece now in Wembanyama. And, guys, everybody is saying that this guy's an alien. He's a freak. He's the next coming. He could potentially be one of the greatest players of this next generation. So the fact that the Spurs hit again in the lottery, the basketball gods have shined upon us again, guys. It's insane. I'm the most excited I've been for Spurs basketball in almost a decade.
And I have a quick question for all of us to go through here. It comes in from Anthony Gonzalez on Twitter. If you guys want to get in on the discussion over at Sports Rush 1440, is Pop going to put Wemby at power forward or as a true center? I will start off with this one. I say true center. I feel like he's a bit too tall to move over to power forward. That's usually where you see the stronger guys who may be able to sort of push him around or be a little bit faster than him. I think having him at center, maybe a guy like Anthony Davis where you put him down low and just let him roam around. I feel like that could be a role for him, but I feel like power forward is not for him.
Now, I feel like he is very skinny.
Yes.
But I mean that goes to how lean he is. But Giannis and even AD, they were really skinny when they first got into the league, and they both bulked up. Giannis bulked up like 2 or 3 times. Big time. So I don't want not asking Wembanyama to bulk up like Giannis, but I do want him to gain a little bit of meat on them bones, if you know what I mean.
What do you think about this, James?
So I think that, give me 1 second here. I'm trying to head to my backyard. I think that Wembanyama, I mean, this is like an age of positionless basketball.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So I could see him playing both the 5 and the 4. I see him more, though, as a 5. I guess as his career goes along and hopefully he puts on a little bit more muscle, I could see him being a 5, but he's going to be a stretch 5. I mean, the skill set that he has, he's not going to be one of these traditional bigs like a Shaq.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's not going to be like that. I mean, I've seen this comp drawn. Now, hold your breath. But they're comparing him to a young Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
I mean, I can see that, though.
I mean, I would even compare him to Hakeem as well.
Yeah. Young, lanky. He has time to fill out.
Even though he's much taller than Hakeem. I mean,
by a few inches.
Well, I wouldn't say, okay, not say much, but compared to like 7'5" as opposed to 7'1" or something like that, or 7 foot.
Yeah.
And then, he has Hakeem. He has the skill set of a Hakeem as well, and that's it's funny that Chris Broussard. Y'all saw that quote earlier this week, or he was like, if he had like a Kareem if he had a Kareem not Kareem, a Hakeem like legacy, it'd be a disappointment. Hey, if he wins the Spurs 2 championships, I wouldn't be.
Yeah,
I'm not complaining.
Have y'all guys noticed this? That ever since the Spurs landed the number 1 overall pick, that a lot of these national media heads are all of a sudden starting to talk kind of bad about Wemby and how Wemby, might not live up to the potential.
Not
and, oh my
just.
God, no, is he going to make it? Like, it's so weird how, fate has fallen upon San Antonio once again. And then now you're starting to hear a lot of the national heads starting to downplay Wemby when before it was nothing but praise from Wemby.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of agree with that.
The Nuggets are feeling that right now in this series.
Yeah, they are.
We'll get into that later, but it's just like, the Nuggets and the Spurs, the Spurs established themselves as a basketball brand now, like they're NBA royalty now. Yep. But it irks them that they're not a West Coast or East Coast team. They're a team from the middle of Texas.
And I want to build on that before we go to break. Not just Wemby, but the Spurs as a whole. As I told you, a guy who we like, we take in his content and KOC talking about the Spurs and the city being boring. I mean, yes, it's fundamental basketball, but then transitioning that over to the city and calling them boring? I mean,
so dumb.
I just can't get on board with that.
It's such a surface level argument. There's no substance to it. I mean, there's multiple NBA players that have played with San Antonio that still live in San Antonio post-career. And like they've settled, they've made roots there. The big three lives there. I mean, there's countless other guys who have played with the Spurs who said, you know what, San Antonio's pretty cool, and they end up living there for the rest of their lives. So I think all this San Antonio nonsense, it's surface level. There's no depth to it. And it's just a bunch of talking head fodder.
And there's other people that are saying, oh, Victor Wembanyama, he's playing overseas. He's going to get humbled. He's going to get a humbling experience in the NBA.
Look at you.
I guarantee nobody's going to humble him more than Greg Popovich himself.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
That's going to be reined in.
And let's just say another top 4 team in Portland. What if he goes to Portland? Nobody would be saying that city was boring. Yeah. Nobody would saying they had a boring brand of basketball.
It'd be
look at their legacy of first overall picks.
Wembanyama and Lillard. I'm just glad, before we move on to your Spider thing, I'm just glad that the Spurs got the number 1 overall pick because you had the Pistons in the lottery a couple of years. The Rockets been in the lottery the last few years. The Hornets, my goodness. Absolute disaster class of a franchise. MJ off the court running the team is not so pretty.
Yeah.
But anyway,
we gotta start wrapping up here, James. So let's get to your Spider conclusion.
One more parting shot, and then I'll hang up, guys. Man, the future's bright. I got a feeling the Spurs will be back in the playoffs here within the next couple of years, and give it about 3, 4, maybe 5 years, depending on how the Spurs build. I could definitely see them being a Western Conference Finals type of team once again and competing at the highest stage. So, all right, guys, well, I'm going to let y'all go.
Well, the Spider.
Yeah, let's get a quick Spider conclusion for all the people listening out there.
In a minute, we'll have a short Astros. I mean, we're all good.
Okay, well, but yeah, man, I appreciate y'all guys holding it down this morning, and I can't wait to be back on next week. So there we go. I think I'm sounding a little bit better.
I would agree.
Before it was sounding like I smoked 20 packs of cigs a day.
I
didn't get to hear it, sadly, but I can only imagine.
It's probably sounding like Edward James almost eating a 6-pack. I mean, eating a 12-pack. I mean.
Oh, sorry.
Anyway, Spider.
Tell us about the Spider, James. Please.
Oh, yeah, Spider. Okay, so Sunday I go in my car.
Right after the show.
This last Sunday I go in the car and I try to find it, right? And I noticed that there was a web that was going from across the back seat all the way down to the driver's side, like where the seatbelt clip is at, like in that little nook right there where the seatbelt clip is at on the driver's side. Well, anyways, I noticed the string was going all the way down to there, and I followed the string, and he was just there. And I was just like, holy crap. And then, so I had some spray, and then I just sprayed the ever-living hell out of it. I essentially intoxicated it, suffocated it. But while I sprayed it, it made a mad dash. So it went under my seat, and I was like, oh, no, here we go again, right? And then I ended up spraying under my seat, and then it made another mad dash. But this time it made a dash, for me. And so I saw it coming at me. I was wearing my gloves. I picked it up, and then I Gronk spiked it on the concrete.
and that is where the Spider saga ends. A spider getting Gronk spiked into the pavement in front of where James lives.
Reminds me of that. You remember Smosh, right, Alex? Man, Spider!
Yeah.
Anyway, James, we'll let you go.
Thank you for getting in.
Love you guys. Y'all guys have a good rest of the show. Talk to you later.
You too. There goes our host, James Espinosa. Thank you all for getting in. We're going to head to a quick break. When we get back, we'll recap some MLB that's been going on. Stay tuned. This is the Sunday Sports Rush. Welcome back to the Sunday Sports Rush. Wrapping up hour one here. Last segment, we talked to James as he is at home recovering from his bronchitis. We talked about the Spurs getting the first overall pick, holding the rights to draft Victor Wembanyama, the French superstar. And we also gave a little conclusion to his spider story that he had going on last week. Wrapping up here, hour one, some MLB talk. And Aiden, you got to see the star shortstop for the Astros.
Second baseman.
Oh, second baseman.
Yeah, there.
Jose Altuve.
Yeah. I mean, my favorite player, right now, Big Papi retired. I need another player to watch to fill that void of after Big Papi's retirement. And Jose Altuve, the little man that could, the little engine that could, all 5'7" of him, or 6 of him. And he struggled the first game. He went 0 for 5, had a couple of miscues at second. But the second game, the honey butter chicken biscuit game on Wednesday.
I heard that one was a blowout.
He had a hit and he got on base another time on an error and looked more solid at the field. He had a nice play at second and it was cool. It was cool to see. The first time I was up closer by like a couple rows behind the dugout, and yeah, man, I'm just excited. I liked Mauricio Dubon at second. And, he was hitting the 300s and whatnot, but Jose Altuve brings that pop. Brings more slugging to the Astros. So, definitely excited to get him back. The Astros have been one of the worst. Let's be honest. They've been one of the worst slugging offenses in the league.
Things are looking up, though. Things are looking up.
However, there is a history of their offense starting off slow and then heating up as the season goes on. And luckily, their pitching is still the best in baseball. I think they have the lead in ERA now as of recently. So
yes, they do.
But it was cool to see, man.
Speaking of that hot start that they've been on, or the slow start, the hot start that they're on now, 8-1 in their last 9, outscoring opponents 43-26, averaging nearly 5 runs a game, a 2.39 team ERA with a 1.8 in the bullpen, and only committing 3 errors. As you said, Jose Altuve made his debut back with the Astros Friday night, went 0 for 4 at the plate. Bit of a slow start, but he'll get his feet back under him, and he'll be getting back into the swing of things. Baseball pun there. He'll be hitting leadoff for the Astros. His first game back since breaking his thumb in the World Baseball Classic back in March. Now, as we end May and head towards the summer months of this season, what's a move that you want to see the Astros make, Aiden?
The move I want to see the Astros make, the starting pitching is done relatively well since Luis Garcia and Urquidy went down. They're supposed to get McCullers back.
Yes.
Man, but their pitching's been so good. That's the thing. I would like to see. Jose Abreu's been struggling. And
Indeed, he has.
And if he doesn't get it together, I would like another bat in that lineup. Another bat in the lineup, and then probably another starting pitcher. Because the bullpen outside of Montero's been solid like they were last season. Montero's last few appearances, he's done well, so I think he's getting to the groove of things now. But yeah, the Astros, I think their schedule's pretty soft here this next month, and I think they're gonna start rolling off from here on out. The Rangers, though, they're still hot. They're still in first place in the AL West at 28-17, 2 games ahead of the Houston Astros, behind them at 26-19. Things are starting to shake out a little bit more as we would expect. The Twins at the top of the Central in the AL, as we sort of would expect. The Rays still on a hot streak. Baltimore right on their tail, though.
3.5 games behind. Yankees starting to make some moves up. They're 6.5 games out. But Toronto has fallen all the way to dead last in the AL East.
Really? They're behind the Red Sox now?
Yes, they are now 8.5 games out of first. Of course, that is a tightly contested division, but
Toronto has talent, but
they do.
But I don't think they need to find the right manager like a Bochy or somebody solid with a veteran presence. Their manager they got now, and he was actually hired midseason last year because they fired Montoyo, and this guy's a knucklehead, man. I think he talks a lot he chirps a lot. He talks a lot of trash from the dugout, and then apparently he forgot the rules where you can't visit your pitcher twice, or he has to get removed.
Yikes!
So they were forced to remove Manoah, I think yesterday because I guess he forgot that you can't visit a pitcher twice without removing him.
And a quick look at the National League before we head to break. Braves at the top of the AL East. No one really surprised with that one. Braves getting off to a good start. They lost their last game, but they sit at 28-17. The Pirates and the Milwaukee Brewers tied for first in the NL Central, and the Dodgers with sole leadership of the NL West at 29-18, 2.5 games above the Arizona Diamondbacks.
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed in the Padres that they'd be playing better as well as the Mets. Right now, I think the Braves are the favorite.
I would have to agree with that.
In the NL.
Yes, I would have to agree with that. Up next, we recap the NBA playoffs. The Nuggets are that good, plus some more NBA talk. We are broadcasting live from the Americana Arms studio. Big city selection, small town prices. This is KEYS Corpus Christi. Hour 2 coming up. Stick around. Hello and welcome, everybody, back to the Sunday Sports Rush. We are now in Hour 2. I am your host, Alex Weister, filling in for James Espinosa, who is taking a bit of sick leave. I am Alex Weister, joined alongside my co-host and producer, Adin Ducker.
Cougars, I love Cougars.
Man, it is so good to be able to hear that sounder in the driver's seat. Boy, do I love it.
Yeah. One of my, Bill Walton is a gem.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
I share the same sentiment with you, Mr. Walton.
Coming up in Hour 2, starting off, we'll have an NBA playoff recap. Nuggets versus Lakers, Game 3, and Celtics versus Heat, Game 2. Game 3 tonight at 7:30, followed by NFL headlines. And then at 10:30, interview with Jeff Garcia about the Spurs, their future. Victor Wembanyama getting a bit of a deep dive on what we see for the Spurs coming up this season and in the next few. And then we will end off with a sports grab bag. But now, the NBA playoff recap. Starting off with last night's game, the Nuggets versus Lakers. Game 3 recap. The Nuggets take the commanding 3-0 series lead with a 119-108 win over the Lakers on their home court with a 37-point performance from Jamal Murray. What a game he had. It seems like at least once or twice a playoff run for the Nuggets, he'll just have one of those games where he just absolutely goes off. This is the first time since 2013 the Lakers are down 3-0 in a playoff series. And I can't say I've ever seen anybody in any sport come back from a 3-0 series.
It's happened, I believe it's happened once in MLB.
In baseball, yes.
The 04 ALCS.
I would have been 3, so I wouldn't have been able to remember that one.
And then I believe it's happened 5 times in NHL. So it's more the NHL is more common because it seems like there's different the games throughout is randomly different. You just never know what's going to happen in NHL. But yeah, man, this series is basically a wrap.
Yep.
And I'll be honest with you, even win or loss, I was texting Dan. I was like, if the Nuggets win or lose this game, I'm very impressed with the performance that they put because they had everything going against them. They had Nikola Jokic foul trouble, where he was basically non-existent the first 3 quarters.
Yeah.
The Lakers had at least 10 more free throws. So the free throw differential was there. The Nuggets, and there's most logical Lakers fans are admitting, okay, the Nuggets are just a good shooting team.
And funny enough, on that free throw note, it is exactly 10 on the dot.
Okay, so they got their 10 plus free throws. And that's with the Lakers fouling the Nuggets at the end of the game.
They had 29 compared to the Nuggets 19, so exactly over 10 on the dot.
And this Nuggets team, they have all the pieces.
They really do.
They need, they have a scoring. A good scoring guard. The MVP of the league as a center who also runs their offense.
Yeah, there's not many more great things you can say about Nikola Jokic.
Their one weakness is they're not the greatest defensive team, but in the fourth, they lock it up in the fourth quarter. The Lakers or Anthony Davis was basically taken out of the game at the end of the game. You had a couple threes from LeBron run down, but this LeBron, he's not at the peak of his powers anymore. I think his fan base needs to realize that and just accept it. Like because prime LeBron they're probably up 2-1 if you have a prime LeBron. But if
yeah,
I mean, you can't really use that argument. Oh, if LeBron was in his prime, it'd be different. Like, well, he's not.
Yeah, it's just plain and simple. If you want to get your takes in on the NBA playoffs, Lakers versus Nuggets, Heat versus Celtics, head on over to Twitter, Sports Rush 1440. That is Sports Rush 1440 to get your takes in. We'll be getting in on that line over there all show long. This is the first time since 2013, Lakers being down 3-0, and they have never won a playoff game after going down 3-0 in history.
That was shocking to me with the Lakers as a story franchise. I thought they would at least win like one game or two.
I agree. And so all signs are pointing to the Nuggets being the ones coming out of the West to represent them in the NBA Finals.
And they're well deserving.
Absolutely.
Their shooting is kept up throughout the playoffs. It's not like a random, have you seen Barry's tweets? Alex,
a little bit.
He is in shambles right now. He's like doing everything he can. He's like, it's shooting luck. I'm like, well, no, the Nuggets have been a good team shooting all season. They're just exposing the Lakers at this point. The difference here, though, is that the Lakers against the Grizzlies and the Warriors, they were able to play well with energy and steal that game one. And then the Lakers were very predictable. They would play well, steal game one, then lose game two, not have as much energy, save it all for game three.
Yeah.
And then barely win game four, not have anything in game five, and then close out game six. They expend so much energy trying to steal the first two games in Denver. When you put yourself in that hole, they had to come out and play with energy in game two. And they were up double digits midway through game two. And then the Nuggets came back through Jamal Murray's superb shooting. And the Lakers is just that there's a big energy difference I'm seeing in these games, and the Nuggets have the right mindset. Could the Lakers win a game four? Maybe, but it's gonna be done in 5 at the very most. So,
yeah. Jamal Murray, as you were saying, he's been extremely impressive, averaging 35 on 52, 46, and 93 splits, just absolutely monstrous. Now moving over to the Celtics versus Heat. Game 3 preview, but a Game 2 recap before we do that. Heat win 111-105. Jimmy Butler has just been an absolute monster, on fire for the Heat, averaging 31 points a game through the entire playoffs, not just this series. He has been a monster. And, of course, Grant Williams getting some heat for challenging Jimmy Butler, saying, this team, we have a real decision to make, said Boston's Grant Williams. The talk of Game 2 after he went forehead to forehead with Jimmy Butler in the fourth quarter as Miami, perhaps not coincidentally, started a 24-9 run to end the game.
The low-hanging fruit would be to go at Grant Williams, right? But, I mean, the Heat were like this. I think the Heat were going to make a comeback either way. Because I agree. They were, they weren't out of the game. They were like a few possessions back, right? And the Celtics they have not been a good home team at all this playoffs. And so the Heat sense that they're very vulnerable. You know, the garden's not gardening as you know, it's like a wilted crop there, as you could say. And Jimmy Butler, he throughout has been the best player in this playoffs, the most consistent. Jokic and Murray, you know, they've been great. They've been really good as well. But Butler, just every big game the Heat need him, he just comes through, man. And you know, he's one of those players, like, who's the number one ringless player right now that deserves a ring. I wouldn't say, I don't like saying deserves because you have to earn it, but like, it's Jimmy Butler.
I agree completely.
Willing the Heat.
Yes.
And you know, the Heat, you know, they're giving them a little bit of help, you know, with Strus, Martin, and Vincent. You know, they've hit timely shots. And then Bam Adebayo, he's solid defensively. You just never know what you're going to get offensively out of him. But with Jimmy Butler, if Kyle Lowry was not to win that back a few years ago with the Raptors, I would have said he would have been another player that's deserving of a ring, but he has his already. He's on his way to go for 2. And then Lowry, he doesn't need you don't need Kyle Lowry to score, but he's still a veteran point guard that can, you know, run an offense or whatnot. The Celtics, man, you just never know which Jason Tatum you're gonna get. And
man.
And he's a top 5 star when he's on in the league. He's a top 5 player in the league when he's on.
It's just fact. I agree completely, man.
But you never know what you're gonna get out of him, and that's an issue. And the Celtics they're gonna at least drop one of these games in Miami. If not, it could be a sweep. But I think Miami wins in 5 or 6, just because the hole you put yourself losing both games at home, it's just not a recipe for success.
And speaking of 2-0 leads, there's some interesting notes for both sides. And as much as I love James, I do have to bring up the question as this note that he brings up here. This is the 18th time that Miami's taken a 2-0 series lead in Udonis Haslam's 20 seasons. I don't know why you had to bring up Udon, as he really hasn't done much for the Heat in the past, let's say, 5 to 6 years.
He's basically an assistant.
He's just a coach at this point.
And honestly, I think Spoelstra, I think they're going to take the jersey off. He's going to be on the coaching staff.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And now, in that point, in those 18 times, they've won all 17 of those series, 13 of them under Spoelstra, and Boston has lost 15 of its last 16 series after falling behind 2-0. The exception came in the first round against Chicago in 2017, another matchup where the Celtics dropped games 1 and 2 at home.
To add context, Chicago, I think they lost like Rondo or something like that. That was when they had that 3 guards of Wade, Rondo. I forgot who. Oh, it was Wade. I think it was Wade, Rondo, and Jimmy Butler.
That sounds right. Back in 2017.
It was Butler's last season there, and Rondo got hurt, and the Bulls had fallen apart there. But yeah, it's just championship caliber teams they can't put themselves in holes like this and try to get out of. It takes special players to do that, and I wouldn't call Jason Tatum special. He had a great performance Game 7, and then he hit clutch out of Game 6. But to be special, you gotta will your team to a championship, and he hasn't done that yet. He had the opportunity last season, and it just didn't work. So.
And they're going to need more from him. Of course, the whole team has had some shooting woes. Jaylen Brown, Al Horford not shooting too hot. Robert Williams, he's, of course, one of the big men for the Boston Celtics. Great defensive player. He's not going to be one that's going to really shoot them back into games. And a few stats to watch here. No players had more rebounds or assists in the first 2 games of a series more than, who would guess it, Bam Adebayo. He had 25 rebounds and 14 assists. But the real gem on the stat sheet from the first 2 games might be Jimmy Butler has more steals than the Celtics combined.
And also another key factor we need to point out is Eric Spoelstra is a top 3 coach in the league.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he's gonna be in the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. He already has the 2 championships.
It also helps that Coach Bud and Monty both got axed from their teams, which they should have been up in the tops of the coaching discussion, but nonetheless, they are gone.
And just this Mazzulla, there's people that, I'm hearing NBA media guys saying that Mazzulla doesn't really know what he's doing in crunch time.
Which is odd because I heard the complete opposite thing coming into the playoffs, but
I do think Ime Udoka was a better coach.
Yeah.
Mazzulla, he came in as an assistant. I mean, to be fair, he didn't really have he didn't really have time to prep before the season started because this Ime Udoka situation happened randomly. So, but yeah, it's just the Celtics they put themselves in a hole against Sixers. I think the Heat are a different breed. They're the Sixers don't have that dog in them.
Yeah,
the Heat do. So I think this series is over in 5.
And that is going to wrap up our NBA talk. Head over to Twitter and get in on the discussion at SportsRush1440. Who wins Game 3 tonight at 7:30? But coming up next, an NFL legend passes away, and we talk more NFL headlines after the break. Welcome back to the Sunday Sports Rush. Thank you all for joining us on this Sunday morning, 10:20. It is a beautiful day here in Corpus Christi. Once again, thank you all for listening in, and stay tuned at 10:30, an interview with Jeff Garcia to talk Victor Wembanyama, Spurs, the draft, what's coming up with Spurs as they are on Cloud 9, them, the fans, everybody around them. We will talk with Jeff Garcia of KENS 5 San Antonio to get his talk on Wemby and the Spurs franchise at 10:30. So stay tuned for that. But now we have to honor the passing of an NFL legend, Jim Brown, who passed away at the age of 87. One of the greatest both professional and college football players of all time. His wife announced of his death on an Instagram post saying that he passed peacefully Thursday night in their home in Los Angeles, I should say. My apologies. To the world, he was an activist, actor, and football star, the post stated. To our family, he was a loving and wonderful husband, father, and grandfather. Our hearts are broken. In 2020, Brown was selected to the NFL 100 all-time team and also ranked as the number 1 all-time player on the college football 150 list to celebrate those sports anniversaries. He was named the greatest football player ever by Sporting News in 2002. Taking a look back into the future, he was selected in the first round of the 1957 draft, played 9 seasons for the Cleveland Browns, and led the league in rushing 8 of those years. He rushed for 12,312 yards and averaged 5.2 yards per carry over his career. He was named a Pro Bowler every single year he played and led the Browns to a championship game 3 times, winning the title in 1964, and was named the MVP 3 different times. Brown worked to empower the black community during the Civil Rights Movement. In June of 1967, he organized the Cleveland Summit, a meeting of the nation's top black athletes, including Bill Russell and Lou Alcindor, who later became known as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, to support boxer Muhammad Ali's fight against serving in Vietnam. In a statement, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell called Brown a gifted athlete who became a forerunner and role model for athletes being involved in social media initiatives outside of their sport. And of course, running backs, they do have their playing time cut short as they do receive a lot of workload, but it goes without saying, he did run into some controversy in the later half of his career. Of course, he retired at 30, which is about when you would see a running back sort of maybe lose some of his step that he had earlier on in his career. But he was filming a movie during the offseason of 1966, and production went bad because of the long weather, and that's when the Browns owner Art Modell threatened to suspend pay if he didn't report to training camp on time, and he opted to retire to focus on his movie career and social issues. And since his retirement, no Browns player has worn the number 32, and a statue of him went up outside of First Energy Stadium in 2016. But with that being said, there are some things that have to be noted about his history. He did not have a stellar record off field, despite his many achievements that he has had and things that he did off the field to try and help the community. No, he was not perfect.
I'll commend him. I'll commend him for what he did, for the civil rights movement and for the black community as well. I just wish he put that energy towards like the women's rights and all that. Cause, I mean, he was never truly convicted on he was arrested, but he was acquitted many times. I mean, he was arrested a half dozen times, mostly on charges of hitting women, and then he was once fined and spent a day in jail after beating up a golfing partner. But I don't want to get. I'm not gonna get too much into all that. But because he never was truly convicted, so I can't slander him too much. It's just that
he wasn't perfect. He wasn't perfect. As much as there are things that show that he was great at times. He did many things to help the community. Nobody's perfect, but he did some things that were less than optimal, you could say.
I mean, he was convicted. The thing he was convicted of was smashing the window of his wife's car in 1999 while she was inside of it. But I mean, other than that, hats off to Jim Brown for what he's done. Considered the
on
greatest
the field play,
football player,
at least one of the best, if not the best, running back of all time.
Yes, considered one of the greatest football players ever, and even just like we did for the black community was special as well.
And with that, we honor Jim Brown passing away at the age of 87. Rest in peace to a legend, Jim Brown. He will be forever missed.
And the domestic issues, we're not trying to stain him on purpose, but we have to at least acknowledge it. To at least
it's something you do have to acknowledge. Yes. And with that, we will move on once again. A rest in peace to the legend Jim Brown. Moving on to another note in the NFL community. It's always hard trying to move on from the passing of a legend, but nonetheless, we do have to move on. We move on to another note of a running back, this one being Ezekiel Elliott. There are many people predicting he will return to the Cowboys. Of course, it would be a significant pay cut as the Cowboys are looking to bolster their roster and make another run to the Super Bowl. What do you think?
Another run?
Well, of course, they've made runs in the past. I'm not saying that they made one last year.
No.
They're a historical franchise, Aiden. Just because they haven't made it in recent years doesn't mean they can't make another run. Come on now. What do you think about this note for Zeke? You think he's coming back?
I mean, he seems to really love this time in Dallas, and for the right price, it wouldn't hurt to bring it back. Just don't give him all those carries like he used to have, just because he was underneath that big contract. So you give Pollard the carries. You got Dave Davis who's come on his own, and I mean that's how the Eagles and Chiefs did it. They did a running back committee. I mean, I would assume the Cowboys would do the same thing. Yeah,
it seems that's the way that the NFL is going towards. Of course, we're not just seeing the Cowboys do it. We've seen the Niners do it with their backfield. We've seen the Miami Dolphins do it with their backfield. The Jets. And now recently the Saints having Kamara, Ingram, Jamal Williams, drafting Kendre Miller from TCU, a loaded backfield. It just seems that's the way that the NFL is moving towards, having a back room of 3 to 4 guys that can go and do multiple different things. And you also do have the teams like the Tennessee Titans who still try and defy everything that the NFL wants to do, giving Derrick Henry 35 touches a game.
Yeah, and the writing was on the wall with the Todd Gurley stuff. He was ran down like
man. And there's people already projecting that Bijan Robinson's going to get 30 carries a game for the Falcons, but I can't see that because
they had that running back that ran for 1,000 yards last season.
Not just that, but also Cordero Patterson. But are you talking about
it was
Tyler Algier?
Yeah, well, Algier filled in for Patterson when he got injured.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean that's just how the NFL is going to be. More teams are starting to smarten up and see. Even the Patriots, when Brady was there, they always had a running back by committee.
Indeed, they did. Indeed, they did.
So that's just how it is going to be from here on out. The workhorse running back's going to be gone.
And that's going to do it for NFL headlines. Once again, rest in peace to the legend, Jim Brown. Up next, the Spurs are on cloud 9 with the impending pick of Victor Wembanyama. Coming up, we will talk to Jeff Garcia of KENS 5 San Antonio to get his takes on Wembanyama and the Spurs franchise going into the new era right after the break. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Sunday Sports Rush, halfway through hour 2 as we are wrapping up the show here. Thank you all for joining us on this Sunday morning here on May 21st. Thank you all for tuning in, and thank you all for getting it over on Twitter. If you want to get in for anything that we have talked about throughout the show, head over to Sports Rush 1440. If you have any questions or want to comment on any of the topics we have talked about, whether that is the Spurs getting the first overall pick, some NFL headlines, some MLB talk, some high school baseball talk, we are here for all of it. But coming up right now, an interview with Jeff Garcia talking Spurs future and the Wemby-Mania that is sweeping not only through San Antonio, but the rest of the world. And without further ado, Jeff Garcia, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm like the rest of the Spurs fan base right now. I am on cloud 9. Right in San Antonio. It was funny. I was talking to the producer before we jumped on. And he goes like, "Well, we're gonna talk about the elephant in the room." I go, "What do you mean the giraffe in the room?" Because that's what it's like. He's like, we're talking about the giraffe in the room. He's that freaking tall, but also with a huge skill set. Back to the basket game, front facing game. Yes, I'm going to say a 7'4" or 5, whatever they're listing, can take you off the dribble. I mean, this is just insane.
Absolutely.
This is just great for the Spurs. Obviously, there's a lot of hype. I'm trying to temper expectations. I know he's a great corner piece to build on, but we got to remember he's just a teenager. He's just 19 years old right now. So we'll see how he handles that pressure. We'll see how he fits into the NBA style. There are a lot more pros and cons, of course. But like every rookie, whether you're Tim Duncan, remember when he came in, what was the knock on him? He can't make free throws. He has to work on that. So every rookie comes in with some knocks, no matter you're a 4-year college graduate, a 19-year-old like Wemby is, or somewhere in between. But the future is bright in San Antonio.
Absolutely. Indeed it is. And once again, thank you for joining us here today. And first off, what was your reaction when you saw that the Hornets got that number 2 pick and you knew that the Spurs were coming up right after?
I saw it coming the moment Houston dropped out. And there was just 3 teams left. Because of the 3, the Spurs had the highest percentage to win of the 3. I think it was Hornets, Rockets, Spurs, and I forgot the other team.
It was Portland at 3 and then the Hornets at 2.
Yeah. Right. So when Houston got knocked out, I said, forget about it. It's done. It's a wrap. And the Spurs got it. There's no way. And sure enough, they did. I mean, of course, they're jumping up and down, celebrating, pumping the fist in. But my first thought was, okay, now what? Okay, great. The rebuild isn't over. Obviously, it's cut down a few seasons. But we'll see what the Spurs can do. And I think they're going to make some noise, whether it be this offseason or now, practically, with the amount of assets in their war chest right now. Or do they let this time for the kid, Wemby, to slow cook? Look, this is not a surprise. If the Spurs decide to do a slower development path with him, no Spurs fan should be surprised. Don't want to bring up his name, but you kind of have to, Josh Primo. When Josh Primo was a Spur, Brian Wright made it very clear that Primo was going to take his own path, take his own time. I believe they said the same thing with Blake Wesley, with Malachi Branham. So should it be a surprise if the Spurs do take more of a gentle path with Wemby's development? But he's going to make an impact come day one on and off the court.
And with that, speaking of the Spurs, in the offseason, who do you think that the Spurs are going to target? And also, do you see San Antonio potentially making a move back into the top 10 of this year's draft as well as that first pick?
I think I definitely see them, like, if you talk about the 2024 draft, like next draft, like 2 years from now.
I think moving up again to try and secure another pick with the load that they have this year.
Just in this current draft,
yeah.
Like just moving up. Got it. You know what? They can do that. They definitely can do that. You know, obviously they're doing their due diligence at the NBA Combine right now. Of course. And they spoke to, reportedly to Amen Thompson, and he's projected to be a top 10 pick. The Spurs can't do that. Look, you know, you look at, some of the teams that landed in the top 10, you know, wouldn't be surprised if they're looking to shop that move, that pick. And the Spurs can't do that. And I mean, what is that? Close to what, 10 first round picks, something like that?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. A boatload of second round picks. So yeah, if a team like Portland wants to rebuild and dump their number 3 pick, you go for it. You know, Spurs can definitely give that team not only picks but players too. The Spurs have expiring contracts and veteran type players. Your Doug McDermott, for example, you know, he sees a flippable contract right there. So the Spurs are well positioned to make any move they can. And that's just their picks, and that's just their current players that are on roster right now. We haven't even touched about the fact they got all that money. They're sitting on a boatload of money to spend, and per NBA rules, they're going to have to spend it. So we'll see what kind of moves they make. So who knows? Perhaps Wemby is enough for the Spurs to buck that, you know, trend of never attracting free agents except for one, LaMarcus Aldridge. So, and I think the Spurs are finally going to be able to be a destination team now that Wemby is there. It's a young core. The future is bright. And I think it'd be great. I fantasize any type of scenario you want, Spurs fans. The Spurs have the assets to do that.
Absolutely. We're talking with Jeff Garcia of KENS 5 San Antonio, host of the Locked In on Spurs podcast, and just gauging what is the current vibe around the city. Are you noticing a lot more Spurs gear now that they got this first pick this year?
Not just in San Antonio, but in France. You know, right before I came on the show with you guys, I came across an article about how Spurs caps are in demand right now in France. The baseball caps. Everybody in France are just looking for them. But as far as locally in San Antonio, and I'm pretty sure in Corpus as well, the fan bases, they're hyped right now.
Yeah.
I mean, taking photos of the murals, taking photos of that infamous mural of Wemby and his Spurs uniform before the draft. I mean, the draft lottery, excuse me. So it's at a fever pitch. Spurs fans were at the AT&T yesterday. For those that were looking to buy season tickets, they can go and look at their seats. From ticket sales to the eventual merchandise that would be pumped around. And get this too, just the NBA. Now, forget about the Spurs marketing or perhaps France marketing. The possibility. We all know what's going to happen. Wemby in San Antonio. Although the Spurs are playing coy right now. Brian Wright and Peter J. Holt are like, we don't know who we're going to pick right now. So, but. You look at the NBA, he's not even in the league yet. And the NBA already announced that he's going to headline the first ever NBA con in Las Vegas. He's not even in the league yet. And he's already part of their headliners.
Unreal.
So that's just unreal. So it's obviously going to put San Antonio on the map times 10. Whatever Duncan did, whatever Robinson did, and to a certain degree, whatever Ice did, George Gervin, Wemby, if he pans out, we definitely put San Antonio on the map. I think fans are going to be excited. The AT&T Center is going to be a lot louder than it was in the last couple of seasons. I'll tell you that much. Fans are telling me that last season they couldn't give away tickets. They would just have to eat it because nobody wanted to go. I think that's going to change overnight, probably. And as next season is approaching.
Hey, Jeff, it's Aiden here. The NBA reporter Mark Stein put out that the Spurs were expecting to have Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, and Tony Parker mentioned Victor Wembanyama. I just want to know what your overall thoughts are on that, because I believe I think those are the right people to have around Victor Wembanyama. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts on that was that told me a lot that Spurs fans obviously don't read my articles. That's what it told me, because this is nothing new. I spoke to Keldon Johnson about it last year, and he says, like, Tim Duncan, Manu, and Tony, they're always there. LaMarcus Aldridge, years ago, he said in a chat he had with me that Timmy was there working with him. Jakob Poeltl. Timmy was always working there with him and the big guys, even to Charles Bassey. So this is nothing new. So, and if you want to read that article about the big three still in San Antonio working with the guys, just go to my Twitter page at Jeff Spurs Zone. You can't miss it. But you don't know what Mark Stein reported is nothing new. It's nothing earth-shattering. It's not groundbreaking. They've always done that. You want even bigger proof? Manu Ginobili is hired by the Spurs to be a player development guy. So Tim Duncan was an assistant coach for one season. So they've always been around. And this is good to know that Wemby and the core will still have them coming to the training center, the brand new training center, I should say, and work with these young guys. So there's still more fine tuning to work with. And not just Wemby who's going to need some work. It's still, Keldon Johnson. Can he develop more of a finesse game instead of just always defaulting to the barrel, your head to the ground and go to the basket? What about Malachi Branham? What's his next step? Blake Wesley, decision-making has to be better. So it's not just Wemby. The entire team still has room for improvement. One thing I think they should do right now is focus more on bringing veteran presence to this roster. I think that needs to happen. There's no knock on Doug McDermott or Zach Collins or Gorgie Dane, but I think a little bit more veteran presence will do this team wonders next season.
We're talking with Jeff Garcia of KENS 5 San Antonio and the host of the Locked On Spurs podcast. And who would be your dream signing, whether it's this offseason or next offseason when we see a lot more high-profile talent coming onto the market?
Yeah, that's a great question. I want to cushion this by saying there's a part of me that wants to see how it starts off the season. Let's just see how we go with this current mix if they don't make any major moves. Let's see how their starting lineup will look like, and then we can go from there. Trey Jones is the name that many Spurs fans are talking about right now. Like, is he the right fit at that position? From me to you, to your listeners, to the Spurs fans in Corpus Christi, I think we all know that a scoring point guard is needed for this team.
Yeah.
We're not taking a shot at Trey Jones at all. As a matter of fact, I think he was the most improved Spur last season, pound for pound, with his big leap. But he's a bit undersized. You can't rely on him to be that offensive juggernaut at that position. I think the Spurs need that catch on fire, give you 20 and a quarter, no problem. Something like that. Look at the playoffs right now, or just the playoffs in general. There's Steph Curry, obviously he can light it up. Jamal Murray, another guard in the wing that can just light it up. So I think they need that. Look, and I don't want them to part ways with Trey Jones. Remember, he is a restricted free agent this offseason. But if they can somehow keep him on the roster, move him to a backup spot, look at the free agents. There's Fred VanVleet. He's out there. I think he'd be a great addition to San Antonio. But that's the joy of the Spurs have. They can make moves. I don't think anybody would be surprised if the Spurs don't re-sign Trey Jones and they go out for somebody else. I mean, they got to build around Wemby, and that's what this team just lacks right now. They got wings, that's for sure. There's no doubt about that.
Oh, yeah.
They got a lot of good big guards. Malachi Branham, just to name one. But the point guard spot is still in question. Blake Wesley, I don't think he's ready for that. There is some hope. Jeremy Sohan did run the point often last season, so perhaps they could be just trot out a big lineup. But I would love to see them just beef up that position, and I think the Spurs will be all right.
We're talking with Jeff Garcia, KENS 5 San Antonio, host of the Locked On Spurs podcast. Adin here again. So the last few off seasons, there's always small rumblings of when is Popovich going to retire? Is this the final season? Is somebody going to take over? But with Wemby-MANIA, going to be a Spur when the NBA draft comes up, does this extend the career of Greg Popovich? Or I guess we could say it does. But how long do you think he's going to be a Spurs coach?
I still have it. What I always thought, even if Wemby didn't come and not still at 2 this upcoming, and then plus one more. So who knows? Maybe Wemby accelerates it to a third. He's 74 years old, I believe, and he's still in shape. He talks talks about how every time he's on the road, he's either on the treadmill or he goes out to cities and starts walking around the blocks. He still, smiles. There's no physical ailments with him that we know of. So I think he'll stay around, and he has nothing to lose but everything to gain. He's already proven himself as an NBA coach. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame in a few weeks. He's going to be cemented in that, milestone. So all he can do now is train Wemby, get him on the right path, put him on a path where he realizes that it's bigger than basketball, that you got to protect your name, you got to protect the franchise. You put on that jersey and what it means and the footsteps that he's following, David Robinson, Tim Duncan. And again, I circle back to this. Spurs fans have to understand he's still a teenager, and that be Wemby. So, and I think Popovich will help him keep that professional vibe going.
Yes.
And hopefully he doesn't stray because, he's just a kid. So we got to keep that in mind.
Yeah, and I told Alex earlier in the show, like, there's always people saying that, oh, he's gonna learn that the NBA is a different animal, and I said nobody's gonna humble Wembanyama more than Greg Popovich himself, and so Greg Popovich is the perfect coach for Wembanyama to help him ease his way into the league, and so on.
Yeah, and look, is he gonna get humbled just on the court? Of course he is. For as much as the pros are, and there are tons of pros about his potential, there's also some cons. There's some question marks. Like, why didn't he play at the highest league in Europe? He was offered, he declined. We got to keep in mind, there's no knock on the league that he's playing right now in France, but it's not the highest league in Europe. It's the highest league in France. So what's going to happen when he plays against the highest players in all of the world, in a few months? Of course, there's his height and the history of big men in the NBA at that height. We'll see what happens from there. And he really has some injuries. He's had he's had leg and back issues already. He's broken a leg bone. I forget which one already. But he did it. He was a teenager, so he can bounce back fast. So I think the Spurs, in that sense, well, obviously they're going to load manage on everybody. Nobody should be surprised. He ain't going to play 82 games. Brace yourself that that's not going to happen. But that's the Spurs. That's what they'll do. They'll rest. They'll maintain to extend players' careers. Not just Wemby. They did it to Timmy. They did it to Manu. They did it to Tony. So they have the blueprint to keep Wemby in a Spurs uniform and keep him successful for a long time.
Well, thank you, Jeff, so much for joining
us.
Sir.
Yes, sir. Anytime.
Yes. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. And, of course, the future is looking bright for the Spurs. You have a great one, Jeff.
You too. Y'all be good. Bye-bye.
And there goes Jeff Garcia of KENS 5 San Antonio and the host of the Locked On Spurs podcast. Things are looking bright for the San Antonio Spurs. When we come back, we'll wrap up the show with a sports grab bag. Once again, thank you to Jeff Garcia for joining us for that interview. When we come back, sports grab bag in the end of the show. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Sunday Sports Rush. Ending the show here, wrapping up with a bit of a sports grab bag. Once again, thank you to Jeff Garcia of KENS 5 San Antonio for joining us for that interview about the Spurs, looking ahead to their future, the future with Greg Popovich and Victor Wembanyama, how long they have together, and a little bit more about what the Spurs may be looking to do. So once again, thank you, Jeff Garcia, for joining us. Wrapping up, a few more minutes left. Bit of a sports grab bag. Want to start off with a massive congratulations to the Big 12 champions in baseball, the Texas Longhorns. Of course, a Coastal Bend phenom, Rylan Galvan, going from a state champion with the Sinton Pirates in 2022 to a Big 12 champion with the Texas Longhorns in 2023.
Yeah, he was a cog in that Sinton offense, and he's been a cog with the UT, and so
Just a phenomenal catcher behind the plate.
Yeah, and UT, I mean, they've always, the last several seasons they've been right there. It's just they haven't broken through yet, and so hopefully this is the year that they can do it.
And just another quick note onto the Sinton Pirates. We've seen a lot of different teams around the area mainly just stick with one pitcher or one catcher, but with them, that's the first high school team I've seen that will work different catchers depending on who's pitching, which I can't say I've ever seen in high school before. And both the catchers I saw were great. It's absolutely insane. So congratulations to the Texas Longhorns, Big 12 champs, and congrats to Rylan Galvan, the Sinton Pirate grad. And another note from collegiate athletics, number 2 UCLA getting upset by Liberty in the elimination round. They are out of the tournament after falling 2-1 to Liberty. Yeah. Unbelievable.
I mean, I always like seeing upsets. So, and UCLA,
of course.
UCLA is a softball superpower. So yeah,
nothing better than a fantastic upset.
I do want to get into a note because we are deep in the NHL.
Yes.
Conference finals as well. Man, the Panthers, they were the last team to make it in the Eastern Conference, and they're up 2-0 with 2 overtime wins against the Hurricanes. And man, there was a 4 overtime game that they won. Almost went to 5th overtime, but they had a heroics. Both overtime goals were scored by Matthew Tkachuk, who's the son of NHL Hall of Famer Keith Tkachuk. And then on the other side of the Western Conference, you have the Golden Knights and the Stars. The Knights and the Stars, they've always been perennial playoff contenders in the West, and they both made a Stanley Cup final in the Knights in 2018 and the Stars in 2020. The Knights are favored, but I am rooting for the Stars. Right now, the Knights are up 1-0. I think they had an overtime win against the Stars in Game 1. So, just whoever's going to win the Stanley Cup, it's going to be either 2 teams that haven't won it in the Knights or the Panthers, or 2 teams that haven't won it in a while in the Hurricanes and the Stars. So I always like seeing that.
Of course.
Because I don't like the Penguins. I don't like the Bruins. I don't like the Lightning. There's a lot of teams I don't like that always win a lot. So it's always to see a lovable loser. Well, I wouldn't say a loser, but like a team that doesn't win as much wins.
Yeah.
So.
And another quick note before we head out, UFC fans, you have a lot to look forward to. In just a few weeks, Amanda Nunes will be fighting again in UFC 289. Then looking ahead, UFC 291, Poirier versus Gaethje 2, and then Sterling versus O'Malley a couple weeks after that. Sadly, UFC cards are not becoming any less expensive, so I wish I could bring you news on that.
Wait, Aljamain Sterling's filing O'Malley?
Yes, August 19th. I know it's a fight many really weren't expecting, but hey, it's the one that UFC wants to book.
I knew UFC was going to give O'Malley the title shot. They were trying to do it, but oh well.
Well, that's going to do it for us. Thank you for Adin Ducker. I am Alex Weister. That's going to be all for us. Thank you all for tuning in to the Sunday Sports Rush, episode 117 in the books. All of you have a great rest of your day, and so long from the Sunday Sports Rush. You have a great rest of your Sunday.